everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Yeah, hi. So I'm Yael Tamar, the founder of Women in Block and Top of Blockchain. And our agenda is basically to bring more women into the space. So that's why we're Women in Block. The men are part of the ecosystem, obviously, because we can never exclude the men, even if we can exclude the women. But the whole idea is to bring knowledge and to bring education and to help advance the blockchain and help advance crypto as a part of a global ecosystem. And that's why today we've invited Ivan on Tech. Women in Block, Ivan on Tech. I have to remember that. So we've invited Ivan on Tech to kind of share his knowledge and expertise with us. He's been a blogger for, I don't know, maybe 7 years in the space. And he's coming over from a few meetings that we brought him in here. So as a part of our activity, we also facilitate meetings between different ecosystem participants. Totally not for any sort of a gain, but so we facilitated a few meetings between him and the local space so that he could help promote Israeli blockchain startups in the space. So he's gonna come over now, and we're gonna do a few Q&A between us, and also we're gonna open it up to the audience. Now, while we're bringing him over here, and I'll exchange a few words with him, I'm gonna let Ethan, who is the CMO at Orbs, to say a few words about where we are and what Orbs is. And we'll start in a few minutes. Thank you.
So we're gonna cover while Ivan gets the full brief. But my name is Ethan, VP Marketing here at Orbs. How many people here know of Orbs? Heard of Orbs? Great. All right. Well, not enough. I'm not doing my job well enough at this point. But basically, we are a hybrid blockchain. What that means is we look at the world as there's lots of really amazing base layers that have awesome decentralization, but they don't have amazing productivity. We kind of view the world evolving into this blockchain stack. So lots of different multiple layers working together to create something that a business or a startup can really use to make an amazing solution. And so we are a productivity layer. We sit on top of other base layers like Ethereum to give companies the stack that they need in order to build something really amazing. We have over $100 million in the bank. We have people involved with us like Kakao, super strong project in Korea, a team of 50, 60 people here. We have an amazing R&D team, lots of incredible partners that we've been working with for a really long time. And we're really excited about some of the things that are happening here. We're also really excited to be working with Women in Blockchain. It's obviously I am not a woman in blockchain, but a massive supporter of what it does, not just from a diversity perspective in terms of women and men, but in the widest sense of how can we increase diversity in our sector to bring as many perspectives as possible. This is a pretty game-changing technology. It's a world-changing technology. In order to really change the world, we need as many perspectives as possible. And even more, we're super excited to be hosting today. Thank you all for coming. If anyone wants more information, make sure to come talk to me or some of my colleagues that are around. And I guess let's bring up the star, right?
Hey guys, great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Here.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right. So, who is Ivan on Tech? Describe yourself
Ivan
in
on
3
Tech?
words.
3 words.
Yes.
Well, I'm a programmer, I'm a YouTuber, and crypto guy.
Very cool, very cool. So, where are you from?
Originally, I'm from Belarus, but when I was 9 years old, we moved to Sweden. Mm-hmm. And it was a long time I was in Belarus, so I tell that I'm from Sweden.
Okay, cool. So I saw a video where you described being in line to get US dollars when there was hyperinflation.
Yeah, right.
And so I can relate to that because I'm from the Soviet Union as well, from Ukraine. And we stood in line for many things.
Right.
Butter and
bread,
sugar,
bread line.
and of course money. And then I remember sometime we were buying ice cream when I was in first grade, and it cost $1 million.
Yeah.
And then the next day it cost 10 million.
And it's funny, in Belarus, they removed 3 zeros from the currency just a few years back. So it's not even that long ago.
It's not even that long ago. So that was a part of your lecture on poverty, and I think you're passionate about blockchain for good. So I wanted to ask you about, let's say, top 3 implementations of blockchain in this space that you see happening.
I mean, talking about the use case, I think one very important use case is about financial exclusion. This is something I talk about a lot, the fact that in many countries you have people without bank accounts. Most people in this world don't have a bank account. Most people in this world cannot send and receive financial transactions, which is very unfortunate, because even if you're great, you have a great idea, you're a great entrepreneur, but you live in Africa, it doesn't matter, you will not get any funding, you will not get any traction, so it will be very difficult for you. And this is a very important topic for me, the fact that anyone in the world should be able to participate in the global economic system. Anyone in any continent should be able to raise money from anyone else that wants to participate in any other continent. Then we also have another use case with corruption, the fact that we can make so many things transparent. And the mass media sometimes says, hey, cryptocurrency is anonymous, but it can be anonymous, but it can also be 100% transparent. And so when it comes to state money, what the government does with our money, it's very important that it is transparent. And blockchain is a great tool to make it towards that, to go towards that end, that if we pay taxes, we see exactly where they go. And the same is, of course, with charities, that you pay and you know exactly where it go, because you can follow it on the blockchain with all transactions.
Make it milestone-based, smart contract-based.
Right. So we mentioned financial exclusion, we mentioned corruption. What else? The third one is censorship, that I think is very important even in the Western world. And another important thing is hyperinflation, which I experienced as a child. And also you realize that people in, for example, Belarus, they understand the need for Bitcoin a lot more.
Right.
When I was small, my grandmother told me, these rubles, don't keep them, buy dollars instead. It's very strange for someone in Sweden to be thinking in that way. But in Belarus, you do all business in dollars. You buy an apartment, usually it's in dollars. It's not in rubles. And so at that time, a seed was planted in my head. This currency thing is not something you should trust. And it's very interesting because in Sweden, for example, and other Western countries, people have such trust to the government and the currency and the banking system because they've never had any problem. But you talk to someone from former Soviet Union, and they heard the same story, that trust in the monetary system, trust in the government, but at the end of the day, sometimes it doesn't work out that well for the citizens. So it's very easy to explain Bitcoin for people in Belarus, in Venezuela, in other countries where things really are messed up when it comes to government or currency or monetary system as a whole. So I think to summarize, it's number 1, the financial exclusion and censorship that we want to remove. Number 2, corruption. Number 3, hyperinflation that we want to remove as well. And in the future, it might very well be the case that it's completely normal for money to be completely separated from the state. And it might sound crazy today, but 500 years ago, if you told someone that religion will be separated from the state, you would be crazy too. So in that sense, I think that is a very possible future world we might be living in, where money and state are disconnected. Right.
So the money is going towards transparency, inclusion. Actually, it might become a tool for those things. The money itself, right? With blockchain and crypto.
Right.
Okay. Sure. That said, a lot of governments are still kind of mistrusting of money, of crypto type of money, and a lot of them say, well, blockchain is great, we can use blockchain, but crypto, we're gonna kind of wait and see what's gonna happen. Do you think that we can actually separate these two, or are they inherently?
It's not going to come from the governments, because they have every incentive to not do it, because it's control, it's hidden tax with inflation. A lot of governmental projects are funded with inflation. Obviously, no one will just let it go. It needs to go. It needs to come from the community, from the grassroots movement. That the citizen needs to push this change, not the governments. And also, you realize that in many cases, you see this misconception in the corporate world that we like blockchain, we don't like crypto. And I like the way Andreas Antonopoulos looks at it. And the way he looks at it is just like with the internet. Back in the days, the internet was very slow. It was people like the idea of having this network, but it was too much pornography, too much scams, too slow. And so people said, we don't like the internet, but we like the idea of a network. So let's build an intranet. And so, for example, Microsoft spent a lot of money trying to build their own intranet kind of thing and tried to include other corporations and said, hey, let's build this awesome network. It's going to be way faster than the internet. It's going to be way cleaner. There are not going to be any scammers. You're not going to have all these issues with the internet, because the internet was a scary place in the beginning. If you told someone that you're going on a date with someone you met on the internet, it would be in the chat room. It would be very strange. People would tell, hey, you're gonna get kidnapped. Don't go.
From that generation.
Right. And you see a similar story now with crypto, that mainstream media, everyone is saying, hey, crypto is great, but too many scams, too much money laundering, terrorist financing, all of that you hear in mainstream media. Let's use blockchain without crypto. But at the end of the day, it is the open, the public technology that is the most interesting. And still today, there is a use case for intranets. Big corporations have intranets for internal communication. But it is the internet that is the most interesting. So I think we'll see a similar movement in private versus public blockchains. People will realize that public blockchains are most interesting, and then maybe there will still be a small use case for private blockchains.
Cool. So you mentioned Andreas. Who are your influencers and why you appreciate them?
Well, Andreas is a very big influencer. Then I actually have a lot of influencers outside of crypto space. I mean, one influencer is Grant Cardone. He talks a lot about business, about being committed, things like that. I learned a lot about business, and I don't think I would have the YouTube channel without Grant Cardone, because being able to do the videos every day, being fully committed to something, that is something I learned from him. And also my mother is a great influencer, because she really started my tech career. She gave me a programming book back when I was 9 years old, and this is how the whole career really started.
Wow, very cool. I have to go get a programming book now. So you've been working with many projects, traveling, seeing many projects. I have a weird question for you. What is the worst name for a coin that you've seen?
That's a tough one. But we joke on the channel. We have a cryptocurrency on the channel. We call it Smash, because you need to smash the likes, and we're like, if you want to be on the channel, you need to have some Smash. So it's like our toy coin we play around with on the testnet. So maybe that is the worst name ever.
You came up with you have to be like superlative in everything, right? Even the worst, I came up with the worst name ever.
Right.
Very good for you. Now, my personal favorites are the ship coin, and there's a Brokeback Mountain coin.
Yeah, I mean, there's also this Fit Vitalik, let's get Vitalik in shape, and there's this ICO to get Vitalik pumped, and let's get Vitalik a gym membership.
I love it how they care about it.
Useless Ethereum token.
It's called that.
That one's very good.
Okay.
That one's very good. And those are only the PG-13 ones.
And there's also like Jesus coin. There are many things going on in coin space.
I'm wondering, so that's the part of the coin marketing, right? So what are the top 3 use cases of crypto in the, let's say, in the financial space?
Yeah, I think we mentioned the top 3 use cases before, with transparency and the social solution and all of that.
So that's all of the, basically good blockchain for good.
Yeah, blockchain, but specifically in finance, of course, remittance is a huge problem. It has also to do a bit with financial exclusion, the fact that you have so many people moving across the world, and in many countries in Europe you have migrants, they don't have any papers, they cannot get a bank account, and you have actually good startups. There's a startup in Finland, I don't know the name, but what they do is that you, without papers, you can get a card, or with limited papers, they obviously have some kind of KYC, but with limited papers, it's easier to get a card from them that you power with crypto. You can deposit crypto and you can get a Visa card, and it's way easier to be a customer in that startup than to be a customer in a bank. So that is another interesting financial application. So remittance, and I think we'll see a lot with securities in the coming years. And the first step we saw with DX Exchange. I mean, it's still in early stages, but it's very exciting. And then hopefully in the future we'll also see native securities on the blockchain. Not only derivatives, but actually native securities on the blockchain with the built-in KYC. Maybe you have zero knowledge technology to make the KYC happen on chain without revealing any sensitive information, but still being able to KYC people.
It's possible with MPC, I'm guessing.
Could be.
Multi-party competition.
And also something else that is important is you have built-in dividends that remove as much trust as possible from the system, and that is going to be one of the biggest use cases moving forward. But it's not one of these use cases that will really transform, poverty and financial exclusion. It's more of the higher level use cases for us in the Western world.
It's going to replace the way we know trade, or at least complement it. So
Yes.
Wall Street, the traditional type of trade that's happening right now, right?
Right.
So especially you mentioned with dividends, there could be some solutions for taxation and
Sure.
yeah, very cool. So I want to ask just kind of like really quick questions
Sure.
that you don't have to think
Yes.
a lot about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all right, cool. Ice cream, chocolate, or vanilla?
Vanilla.
It seems like you must have more than 24 hours in a day. How many hours do you sleep?
I sleep a lot. It's 8 hours minimum. Actually, like my body doesn't compromise on that. It's impossible. 8 hours.
All right, nice. So is there anywhere in the world you'd love to go where you haven't been so far?
Japan. Haven't been to Japan.
Okay.
Seems interesting.
Why? What's attracting you to Japan?
Culture, the tree with flowers. I don't know. I just have a very interesting picture. Yeah, cherry blossom trees. Yeah. I just have an interesting picture of Japan.
Cool. All right. Which game or movie universe would you most want to live in?
Most want to live in. I think Ready Player One is interesting. Not that world is very exciting to live in, but it's cool technology at least. So maybe
Very
that's
competitive world.
Well, yeah, exactly.
You like that? You're competitive?
With myself mostly. Because everyone has to find their own path, and being too much competitive with others is not a good thing, but with yourself that you're always developing, that's very important.
All right, so what are your top 3 goals for 2019?
2019, we work a lot with our academy, where we teach people how to program on Ethereum, EOS, and NEM. You don't have to be a programmer, we teach you from scratch, and we want to publish 1 course per month, so that is one of our biggest goals for 2019, and the first course we're releasing now in January at the end is going to be about game programming. So we basically teach anyone who is interested in our online course how to create games from scratch, and then we add blockchain functionality to them. So you collect coins, you actually get your C20 coins, and then you trade with other people, you actually do blockchain trading. So Academy is a huge one for us, and this is our long-term mission with education and bringing this to the world. That is a very big goal. But then also we have, of course, YouTube. There's always something to learn. YouTube is always changing, reach more people, reach more eyeballs, reach more audiences in different markets. And it's always changing, the thing with YouTube. You're never a YouTube expert, and the algorithm changes, the way you need to do videos changes. So it's something you need to always keep in mind and update yourself on.
Cool. So what do you want to do when you grow up?
When I grow up? Well, we'll see. I want to... the academy is really something that I want to grow. I think the education will change forever, and it is already changing. You cannot just go to school, get a diploma, and think that you're set.
So you're extending it from blockchain to other fields?
Maybe, who knows? Right now it's blockchain, but I do think that there are many opportunities in online education as a whole, because the fact that you go to a school and you have different people coming into the room and telling you different subjects, it's old, and education is a never-ending journey. You always need, especially with new technologies such as AI, and many jobs will disappear. Even programmers, many programming jobs will disappear as well, because programming is not really that hard. A lot of programming is just easy placing buttons, connecting buttons to some function, doing easy calculations. That is not complicated. It's not brain science, rocket science. But then there's another part of programming where you really solve computer science problems. You try to organize data in a good way, try to search for data in a good way. Those jobs will not disappear, but still, most programmers don't do that. They do the simple things with creating a UI, creating a website.
So that's a waste. Actually, most professions do that. Even let's say radiologists who read MRIs, most of the time it's just like not uncomplex stuff that machines can do.
And it's it goes way deep into societal problems that might arise, because when people are unemployed, there is social unrest. People are not happy with the way things are. people tend to go to weird ideologies, populistic ideologies. So I think it's just important for the human race to have this in the back of the head that you cannot be fully educated. You're never fully educated. You always need to adapt, take a look at yourself, and see where you are in the future. Will you even be needed? And everyone needs to take this responsibility. So therefore, I think online education is going to be huge.
That's awesome. You know what? If I could give an input of what's needed, I think that all the taxi and truck drivers should get educated to be programmers, because in 10 years there won't be any. So let's start and think about professions that are not going to exist in 10 years from now, which is many.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Awesome. So do you have any pets?
Pets, I don't.
But maybe
maybe I'll have a dog. But there's so much to do. There's so much traveling.
Let's get a little one.
Exactly.
Paris Hilton. All right. So, which Swedish foods do you think everybody needs to try?
Meatballs, mashed potato.
In IKEA?
Exactly. In IKEA. It's very easy. It's not even hard.
Do your parents cook any traditional foods that you like?
Nah, not really. We don't make it complicated with food. Meatballs are good. What else? I mean, there is Christmas traditions with you have ham, and then you have mustard with ham. That is a Christmas thing. But other than that, also you have this bread people eat to breakfast. It's like hard bread. It's crispy.
Wow!
I don't know what it's called.
Oprah went to I think Sweden or maybe some other Scandinavian country, and she brought bread, like she smuggled in bread to the US because it was so
It's
good.
hard bread and it's crispy and it's healthy. People eat it a lot.
Yeah, I think she did a special. I think it was in Sweden, and everybody leaves their babies in strollers outside, and everybody's happy. Yeah, is that true? Is that the
there is no such country. But it's actually
and there's no poverty.
It's
like
of course there is in all countries. But it's good. Sweden has a good brand in the world, and people think that it's a great society. So it's good PR.
Yeah, good PR for Sweden. All right, so you said you did a lot of swimming when you were younger. So what do you do now to work out?
To work out, we go to classes in the gym.
Yeah.
Body pump or body combat, things like that. Spinning.
Okay. Cool. What's the longest you've gone in the past year without your phone, technology, or internet connection?
Not long. I mean, not even a day. And I'm not really into that. Actually, I think it's the
detox.
The way humans interact is changing, and having a phone is very important. You're not. I mean, to put it harsh, you're not really a functional member of society if you're not using your phone. And if you're not connecting with people. Obviously, it's all in moderation. You can really mess up your brain as well with too much dopamine on Facebook and likes and Instagram, but you need to find a way to use it in a productive way. And for me, being on email, being on Twitter, being on social media is very important because it's part of my job too. But I think everyone needs to keep this in mind that, for you to be fully functional, you need to understand how everything works, and you need to be everywhere, you need to keep up. And the same with the kids. I don't have kids, I don't have any experience really, but I think it's still, if I would have a kid, I would still let them use a lot of technology so that they know how it works. They're digital citizens of the internet. They understand, because always now you see that kids are using phones in a different way than even my generation did, and I'm not even that old.
And how old are you?
22 right now. And you see 10, 12-year-olds with Snapchat. They're a completely different way of using technology. So there is a gap between us and them, and there is a bigger gap between us and the older generation, and that will only be faster and accelerate faster. So it's very important to be updated.
Cool. So when you have dinner with friends, do you put your phone away, or do you?
My friends and I we're respectful. We don't do a lot of texting, but it's not that we're freaks that we don't even have phones. We check it casually, nothing.
Cool.
And also, I understand that for an old generation it looks weird that you sometimes you eat dinner and then you have a few minutes where everyone checks their phone, but it's also natural because you have so much going on in other places, and I think it's just normal. It won't be. It's like back in the days when newspapers were a new thing. Maybe you guys saw it on the internet that everyone is sitting on the train reading newspaper, and this is and the caption is that the technology is making us unsocial. Everyone is reading newspaper. Nobody is talking with each other anymore. So it's the same kind of thing.
People just don't want to talk to each other. Just looking for something to hold.
Yeah. I think everything is going to be fine. New technology is not going to destroy us. It will enhance us, and it's important to be on all platforms. But keep in mind the dopamine thing.
Yeah.
That Facebook and all of the other platforms, of course, want to keep you as much as possible, and you need to keep that in mind too.
We're outsmarting them now. So
Yes.
Okay. You know, in Israel, you have this Saturday, the Sabbath.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
many people from Friday night to Saturday night
Yeah.
don't use any technology.
Right, we've heard that. Yes.
Yeah.
We were in Jerusalem this Saturday,
Ah, okay.
and so we learned you cannot work, you cannot even write a piece of paper to put
Yeah.
in the wall. You need to prepare that. You need to prepare that before.
I don't even think you can put it in on Saturday. Can you?
Yeah, you can. You
You
can.
can? If you write it in advance?
Okay.
It's muktzeh. All right. So do you still read books on paper?
Yeah, I do.
What's the latest or the best you can recommend?
I mean, one of the good ones that I read lately is 21 Lessons for 21st Century. The very famous book by Israeli person. Is this it? That is very good. Also, I read recently a book from a Swedish philosopher called The Netocrats. I really recommend Netocrats. He basically talks about how the society is changing with technology, and that how the class structure is changing with technology, because humans are always the same, but technology is different all the time. And technology is what is really changing the class structure. So before you had dukes, you had kings, and why don't we have dukes anymore? Well, because the technology is different. They became irrelevant, and the power structures we have today are not here forever. Technology is changing them as well. And so you see this, for example, a big crisis in traditional media. Nobody is watching state television anymore. This power structure that had full control of its citizens and could tell different opinions to its citizens and was very convincing back in the day is now struggling a lot. And people have different podcasts. There's so much content everywhere, and you cannot really control people with media anymore. So this is one example of a power structure that is crumbling. And he talks a lot about influencers and how that is changing as well. That who will be the upper class of the future, and how you need to prepare yourself. A lot about education as well. That you need to be thinking, okay, where am I in this digital technology? And he talks about people who are proficient in technology. They understand the importance of networks. That's why the book is called The Netocrats. He talks about this new class that is becoming the netocrats, people that understand the value of networks, that it's not really about money, it's not really about the capital of money anymore, it's capital of networks, capital of trust, that you're trusted personality, that you're trusted business. And this is the new power structure that is emerging.
Right, and it's very aligned with blockchain and crypto.
Sure,
Does he mention that at all?
I don't remember that he mentioned crypto, but he talks a lot about the fact that, for example, Instagram will disappear because Instagram is not creating any value.
Yeah.
And the average time you watch an Instagram picture is like 0.2 seconds. Nobody cares. You just like, because you want to get likes back. There's no value creation, there's no network, there's no community, there is no collaboration. And in that sense, that's why I love YouTube so much, because there's so much value creation happening. I learned so much from YouTube, and people are learning so much from YouTube too. So very interesting book, Netocrats, I can recommend.
And like you said, young people are using social media even differently. You know, my friends with teenagers, the way they tell me the way they use Facebook is basically stories, just look through and that's it.
Yes.
So that's the only way, and that's I think that's why they added the stories after the Snapchat.
True.
So
true,
cool.
Of course.
So you're talking about networks and the power of networks and so on. Are you a part of any networks, professional networks?
Professional networks, not professional networks, but of course YouTube is a network.
Yeah.
I mean, the community that I'm building with my colleagues, that is a network. The academy is a network of people that want to learn programming and blockchain, and they're interested. So that is how I work and how I try to work. And I think everyone should be building their own network and being, as I understand it, of course, Netocrats is a philosophy book, so everyone has their own understanding. But as I understand it, you don't need to be like YouTube or influencer. It's all about are you a party creator? Are you a movement creator? Maybe you assemble people at your house. Maybe you assemble parties. You need to be the spider in the net with different groups of people, many diverse group of people. If you connect them together, that is a very good position to be in, and maybe then you are a netocrat too. So it's all about.
And netocrat is a builder, is like in the middle of the network?
I guess so, yeah. Both participant, but it's all about adding value. How can we add value to the world through networks? And how can we connect different people together?
Yeah.
Because it is, I mean, you all have met people who know other kinds. There's always one guy that has friends in all different groups, and he can connect with different groups, and that is a very powerful position to be in. And up until the internet, the issue is that if you're not extroverted, it's hard for you to be that guy. But now with the internet, it's easier, and so internet really allows anyone to be in that position. So I think as long as you understand the basics of where we're heading as a human race, you get the picture and you can take it from there.
Are you extroverted or introverted more?
I'm introverted more, yes.
So internet gave you kind of like this outlet.
True, yeah.
In YouTube, that's what I hear
Yeah.
a lot of from YouTube influencers, that they started out being introverted and sitting in their room and having a lot to say. They found this outlet. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't even really believe in introvert versus extrovert. I mean, maybe yes, there is a tendency, but it's good to be an extrovert. I mean, the world, in my view, favors extroverts. You need to create connections. You need to create value. You cannot just sit at home and program things or do things on your own. And I was that way for a long time. And of course, YouTube was a great way, but also the older you get, you become more and more extroverted.
Yeah.
You become more comfortable in yourself. But of course, when I was 12, 13, you're insecure. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what is going on. Then those times I was an introvert, to a much larger extent.
Got it. Did you go to a traditional college?
Yeah. So I went.
Where did you study?
Computer science in Sweden, KTH.
Oh, okay.
So I studied for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
The program is 5 years, the master's program. But then academy and YouTube, everything took off. And the good thing with Sweden is that you can always go back to your university.
I was gonna say dropouts did really well.
Right. And it's good to be a dropout in Sweden because you're always welcome back. Another good thing in Sweden is that if you fail an exam, you can do over and over infinite number of times.
Yeah.
You don't get thrown out of the university as in many other countries.
Yeah.
So it's a very special system. But also, I think it's also positive because I know many people who are maybe 32, 35, and they were in my program.
Hope for them.
And they're still trying to do this test they've done so many times before, and and they're excited about technology, about this space, and then they succeed and they get a job. So why waste talent? They have already gone so many years to university.
Yeah.
Let them finish.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, before they die anyway.
Before they die.
So you mentioned charities. Are you supporting any charities?
Charities. Well, I mean, a charity, in the way I view charities, if a young guy or girl comes to me and wants advice, that is my charity. But in Sweden we also joke that the taxman is the greatest charity there. But when it comes to helping younger generation, that is where I think I can contribute the most.
Okay.
And then for some time I was also contributing to Red Cross. It was in those days when they were standing outside the university and trying to catch people.
Blood, maybe.
Blood, yeah. But now, for me, it's all about empowering the younger generation because I learned so much from the older generation through YouTube, through different influencers about how world works, how society works, how networks work, as I explained, also how business works. So I think that is the biggest charity you can give. Just educate people, inspire people, and without those influencers, I wouldn't know maybe 10% of what I know today. So I think the internet really, and you see it also with younger generation right now, people that are 14 years old, like 13 years old, and they're saying so smart things because they read Harari, they read 21 lessons. Man, when I was 13, I didn't even know that. And the same is coming from the older generation. They're telling to me, when I was 22, I didn't know that. So the human race is actually leveling each generation, and it's actually interesting that some people say that every time there's an older generation that looks down on the younger generation and says now they screw it up, they use too much phones, they use too much newspaper. Back in my days it was a lot better, but in reality the new generation is always smarter, always better, and they have a better understanding of what is happening.
Yeah, awesome. So you've said your journey into programming started when you got hacked and lost a RuneScape character.
RuneScape, yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So how did that drive you to learn more about technology?
Well, I played a lot of online games when I was a kid, and RuneScape was one of these games I played a lot. And when I was 9 years old, approximately, my account was hacked. Someone just stole my password. I think they just asked me for my password, and they somehow convinced me that they are the company that runs the game.
Wow.
And I was 9 years old. I gave them my password, and then all the progress I made in RuneScape disappeared.
Yeah.
Everything you work for, it was gone. And as a kid, I envisioned myself to be good with computers because I play online games, I play RuneScape. My classmates, they don't really do that. They play football or whatever. So I envisioned myself as this computer guy. Although I didn't know anything, I just knew how to play RuneScape basically. But somehow I had this self-image that I'm good with computers. And then my mother came with a book. Hey, Ivan, you're good with computers. Maybe you can create your own RuneScape. Really, my goal with learning programming was to create games.
Yeah.
So that is why I started to read this HTML. The first book I got was an HTML book and says, create your own website basically. And I started doing that. And because it said on the book, create your own website, I thought that, hey, I will be able to create RuneScape because RuneScape is in the website. You go to a website and there is RuneScape. So I was like, okay, if I only read 200 pages, maybe I can create RuneScape, I'll become this game developer, and many people will play my game. But at the end of the book, you can only do basic things. You can show some text on the website, you can show an image, you can show a list, and I'm like, okay, so what is the next step?
Yeah.
And the next step for me was actually C++, because I was I want to do real game development. And when I read on the internet, they said C++ is for real game development. So I started doing that. Obviously, I could make things happen. I could understand how it works. I could understand the basics. I could program in C++, but not on the level that I then learned in university. I mean, how to really program in C++. But I had my understanding of C++, and then I also started doing JavaScript and Java. And as soon as you learn one programming language, it becomes easy to learn others. Mm-hmm. And it's a never-ending journey. There's always something new to learn. So I always compare it to Lego. Like, programming is infinite Lego for grown-ups, and you can sit there at night, you can keep building and solving problems. It's really addictive. For some reason, I think I was addicted to programming. Just trying to build things because it's so fast. You type something, you press run, and you see a program, and you change something, and you see
it's dopamine.
Yeah, it's dopamine. Yeah. And so I did that for a long time. I worked in several startups in Sweden. I worked for Ericsson, a big Swedish company. You might remember Sony Ericsson phones. Mm-hmm. Now they don't do phones anymore. They do more 4G and 5G communication. And then at Ericsson, I actually I had this Bitcoin interest of mine since 2013. And when I worked at Ericsson, I was pitching Bitcoin to everyone. I was explaining Bitcoin and nobody understood how it works. And then Ethereum came along. And I was even more hyped. I was starting to explain Ethereum to people, and you realize executives have no idea. Engineers that are way smarter than I am, way older than I am, they have no idea. And that is really how I started talking about blockchain on YouTube. And this is really how YouTube journey started.
Yeah, okay. So 5 years ago, did you anticipate that you would be doing this today in this conference room? No, I'm just kidding. In general,
absolutely not. No, absolutely not. I was having my goal to be a programmer, and that is where I was heading.
Okay. And do you envision yourself programming and creating things again?
I have no idea. Maybe.
What's your dopamine now?
I mean, I think I will always be interested in programming and always be updated because I like to be on top of the game. I like to know what is happening in the programming space. But I also learned that there's so much other things I like to do. I like educating people. I like explaining things. I like building these communities. I like doing marketing. How can I sell a programming course to people so that they actually want to go and they actually want to pay for it? It's not that simple, because when you come here and you say, hey, we're going to do Ethereum programming, you're going to learn Solidity, this and this, I mean, you need to try to make it interesting for people. So I think that is very exciting. And at the end of the day, it comes to human psychology. How can you make people excited about something? How can you make them interested? And for me, I'm trying to understand that and use it in order to educate. And this is one of the things that the school system often fails at. You come to the school, I mean, the teacher doesn't care to motivate me. He doesn't care to make me excited. And therefore, it's a big issue. And understanding the human psychology and how you can get people motivated to study is a very big thing. And that is what I want to study more. Basically, understand how people work better.
And how you can touch on the buttons that create their dopamine, and how you can amplify it.
And for me to build the education and to build the education further, it's very important that people enjoy learning. How can you do that?
Exactly.
It's a very interesting topic, and I mean, people use it for good things. I mean, we use it for good things. We do education, but people also use it for bad things, because the same kind of mechanism are also used by online casinos and Facebook and trying to keep you on the internet all the time. So it's a very important thing, I think, for everyone to understand how it works, so that you realize how different people are using it. And just like any tool, it can be used for good or it can be used for bad.
Do you think technology has increased productivity overall?
Productivity, absolutely. Yes, it has. I mean, just look at the GDP.
Let's say human productivity.
Human. Of
Human.
course, yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, it's very easy to point at people that use social media at work, but back in the days, you didn't have tools, you didn't have Excel, you didn't have email, so it was way less productive back then. But of course, there's always some things that steal our time with new technology, but I think it is a net positive.
Okay. So what about AI and blockchain and AI combination?
Blockchain and AI. Well, I think for us to avoid a future where a few companies own the entire world with AI, actually where we are heading right now, there needs to be incentive to share information, because a lot in AI has to do with data. And I previously thought that I studied for 4 years, and the 3 years was just basic computer science, and then 2 years is master. So I actually studied 1 year artificial intelligence. That was my master. And so one important thing with the internet today and how it works is that you have a few corporations collecting everyone's data. And it doesn't matter how good of an engineer you are or how good mathematician you are, it's all about data if you want to build a good model, a good mathematical model that represents the world. And this is when we start talking about AI. How good of a mathematical model you can build that can predict some action, that can predict some outcome based on some information it already has. And currently there is no incentive to share this information. So when Google collects information, Facebook collects information, there's no incentive to share. And Google actually trains their models in many interesting ways that we're not even aware of. So for example, when you have this CAPTCHA things, you need to click an image.
Yeah.
Well, it's used for training the image recognition, because in many cases, Google themselves don't know what is a car. They tell you, click on cars. And in many cases, most of the times they know, but sometimes they themselves don't know. So they use you for image recognition training. So
like cars or stores, street signs.
Yes. It's brilliant, but also very. You don't know that, people don't know that it's happening, and there's no real incentive for them to share everything that they collect. And I think with blockchain we can start building incentive models that incentivize people to share information, such as training sets for artificial intelligence. And there are some blockchain projects that are trying to do that, but up until now we haven't seen anything working yet, unfortunately. But it could be one of the things that will make it more, take this initiative forward more, in a more democratic way. And you see different views on artificial intelligence. Maybe you heard about Elon Musk. He is very worried about what's happening with
the Wild West of AI.
Yes, Sam Harris is another one. Yes, so people are talking a lot about that you in the future might have a few companies controlling everything that is happening in the AI space. And also right now we're talking about that without the phone you're not really a functioning member of society, but in the future maybe you will need AI to be a functioning member of society. Then you have 2-3 companies that control who has access to that and who is not. It becomes pretty scary too. So I think it's a very important thing to keep an eye on, for sure, and think more about what is going on.
Right. Reminds me of like Black Mirror.
Black Mirror, yes.
So Bitcoin ABC or Bitcoin SV? Which one, and what's your take?
I'll say ABC. I'll say ABC because it's just. I mean, both of them are. If I could choose, I would choose Bitcoin. But now you give me 2 choices that are less favorable. But for me, ABC is more favorable, just because of the people behind Satoshi's vision. I don't like them. Basically, I don't think that they're good for the community. I don't think that it is a good strategy to have. They're building a walled garden. They're writing crazy things on Twitter. They're scaring people away from crypto. I think they're threatening people with lawsuits. They're doing this very, in my view, negative movement when it comes to patents, trying to patent everything, threatening with suing people if they use their patents. I'm not a supporter of that. But hey, they are top 10. They are a top 10 coin, and whatever we like them or we don't like them, they're still pretty significant if you look at market capitalization. So who knows what happens. But at the end of the day, there's only one Bitcoin, and for me, it is BTC.
Oh. So you mentioned different changes that have happened in blockchain in the last 10 years. Where do you see this field going in the next 10?
10 years. Well, I hope unfortunately last year we did a lot of crazy things last year, and I think it scared a lot of people away. And many serious people, real executives, for example, people from Ericsson where I worked and other people, they took a serious look at blockchain and they were like, what is happening here? And also we were talking with some guys before, there's so much manipulation going on, not only in price, but also in GitHub. For example, where you have all the code. A normal developer comes to crypto GitHub and he sees all of these inflated stars, all of these inflated commits. It's completely mind-blowing. It never happens in normal open source development, that you have open source projects just blowing up and increasing their engagement on GitHub because they know that people will watch. They know that their investors will take a look, and their investors don't know anything about programming, but they will take a look at the star count, and they will take a look at some commits, and they will not even click on the commit and see that nothing has really changed. So unfortunately, I think it will take a few years for us to come back from that, because many people were scared away. They took a serious look. I know personally many people that are very serious. They took a serious look on crypto, and they just thought, hey, what is happening? We cannot build anything. We cannot trust anyone. It's very hard to find someone to work with, someone who has great intentions. Especially it's hard to do that in a bull market when everything is increasing, everything looks good on paper. And therefore it's important with a bear market right now that we separate the good projects from the bad projects, because only the good projects will survive until the next one. And I mean, just like with the internet bubble that we had 20 years ago approximately, we saw a lot of hype, many people get disappointed, and it will take a few years for people to return, both when it comes to professionals, when it comes to investors, and just the public mind. So in the next 2, 3, maybe even 4 years, we will be in this stage where we just need to work and improve ourselves.
And do like evangelism for blockchain.
Build something useful. There is still no killer app, as we discussed with banker guys before, I think, and there's still nothing that has really happened that people want to use. And also we compared it to email, that before you had email before, yes, but nobody was really using it. It was only like 10 people using email, and people said, okay, we understand the thing with email, but it's not really applicable to us. We can still fax it, we can still send mail. And until you see Googles of the world, and until you see this really, really groundbreaking innovations, it's hard to even explain technology to people. It's hard to pitch internet when you only have email and you have a limited amount of gigs that use it.
Well, you also have to ingrain it into the daily use of the individuals. That's what happened with email, and that's what happened with many things in history that we now use daily, right? The 10 years that are ahead of us when we have to evangelize blockchain and crypto, things are going to stabilize, and let's say we're going to have crypto in our daily lives, we're going to have blockchain on the daily lives. What are you going to miss about the Wild West of uncertainty?
Well, although it's a Wild West, of course, it's very interesting. It's very fantastic to be in this space at such a time where you learn so much about regulation, because regulation is being formed right now. You learn so much about trading in general. What is the security? What is the utility token? I think people who enter blockchain, they learn so many things about so many topics. They're a bit of a programmer now. They know a bit how GitHub works because they're a crypto investor. They want to know exactly what kind of developers the project has, what they're doing. So people know a bit about GitHub. Normal people don't know it, but crypto investors know it. People also become a bit proficient in drawing graphs on charts, trying to see some triangles. If you believe in that, if you don't believe in that, still people are interested. They learn about technical analysis. They learn some indicators, head and shoulders, some BART pattern. Normal people don't know that. Crypto traders know that. And so just this phase of very big uncertainty when we're forming the entire industry, it's very special. It doesn't happen often, and you learn a lot about many different things. Yeah. And of course, there are great opportunities right now. For example, as I mentioned, one of my biggest motivations to start YouTube was that executive at my company at Ericsson did not know anything about that. So for me, it was a way to get in the door. I'm this crypto expert. You don't have anyone who knows about crypto in your company. I'm the guy. And that was my original plan. It was not to blow up on YouTube. It was just to create content, send to them, hey, take a look. Could be interesting for this and this and this. And obviously, many doors are still open. There are so many people that are just getting into, so many serious people, so many serious companies that are just getting into it. So I think it's not often that you have industry, a space where you can very, very rapidly climb the career ranks. So for anyone who is interested, go to academy.ivanontech.com, enroll in the course, learn all about how to program on Ethereum, on EOS, on NEM. We teach you from scratch. You don't need to know anything, and it is one of these things that you cannot miss. It's not very often that you have this opportunity to be involved in an industry that is shaping day by day.
For sure. All right, so I got a last question before we open it up. You mentioned the inflated numbers on GitHub and other social media, and now we have exchanges that there was the research done that most exchanges don't have, let's say, over 100,000 daily users, and there's lots of inflated numbers. How do we bring more transparency to that?
It's very difficult, and I think it's all about the consumer at the end as well. People are still using exchanges that have bad practices. It's all about the community being more aware, and at the end of the day, it's impossible to do any real due diligence. I mean, how do you do due diligence? What people do right now is that they take a look at the daily visitors, because you have third-party services that can do that. You go to SimilarWeb, you write the website you want to check, you see the daily users, and then you compare that to the daily volume on CoinMarketCap. And then you realize if you divide the daily volume by the users, each user is trading like $5 million. Obviously, something is fishy. So that is the way you could do due diligence. But at the end of the day, I think the bear market is this time where a lot of bad players will disappear, because you cannot have shady business models in this period. You cannot survive on coin listing fees only. You cannot survive on doing a trade mining or the other crazy things that were invented during the bull market for exchanges. So I think it's one of these times that will cleanse a lot of bad actors. And also you see the movement with decentralized exchanges. Those will put a pressure on centralized exchanges. And the problem with decentralized exchanges right now is that nobody is using them. Why? Well, they're slow. You don't have any liquidity. They're made, by geeks, for geeks. It's very complicated to use. But all of these things are being resolved, and I know several projects that are working. One of them is Resistance, actually from Sweden too, and they're really tackling these issues. How can we make it faster? How can we add liquidity? And how can we make it so that people actually want to use it? How can we make a DEX that looks like Coinbase? So it's very easy. Like, there is a fiat gateway, you click here, you deposit, and you can switch between any different coin. And I think that will put pressure on centralized exchanges, because then it turns out that the real use case for centralized exchanges is support, and really new people that are getting into the industry, they will always need a centralized exchange. They will not be using a decentralized exchange, because they will have problems, they will lose their password. My parents will not use a decentralized exchange, I think, because they will need to call a Swedish support. My mom doesn't even use Coinbase. It's English. She doesn't trust it. She needs a Swedish one. So I think there will always be a use case for centralized exchanges, but it will just be much smaller, and it will only be the good ones that will be able to survive in this small niche that will be centralized exchanges in the future. But they will not disappear in my view. There will also be a use case for centralized exchanges.
Kudos to your mom. My mom just got WhatsApp, so it's like, my mom's never gonna use a decentralized exchange. What does your grandma use?
Grandma? Well, she knows YouTube. She watches YouTube, so that's good.
Awesome. All right, guys, floor is open.
Questions? Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Ivan, hi, Renan
Hi.
from US Israel.
Nice.
I've seen a lot of your YouTubes, and you certainly catch kind of the most interesting action that's happening on the blockchain space. Like right out of the bat, I saw your video of the 51% on Ethereum Classic, right on the one day after it was published, and a lot of projects that get it. For on one hand, a lot of hype, but they're also interesting, like tech space, and you've explained several consensus algorithms. So, what is your pattern to decide, okay, this is what I'm going to talk next on my next YouTube video, and does it need a team, or just Ivan decides we're talking now,
YouTube is only myself. I don't have anyone helping me there, and I decide everything when it comes to YouTube. And it's usually I try to feel what people want to hear about, and where I can add some value, some points, some analysis that no one else has. So my niche is technology. I can explain things in what I think is better than anyone else when it comes to tech side, and put it in a bigger context. So I try to see where I can be helpful there. And also, of course, you need to talk about relevant things. So speed is actually very important. And if I had done 51% attack Ethereum Classic like today, people wouldn't care, because the news has passed. So, part of the job is to feel what people want to watch. And you get that feeling from Reddit, you get that feeling from Twitter, you get that feeling from. I use an app called Feedly, where you can just insert 100 different news websites, and you get a feed of everything that is happening, and you can see the statistics, what people are clicking on. And so it's all about, okay, how can we make something about a topic that is recent and relevant still, and add an angle that is valuable, that people haven't heard about, and of course make it interesting somehow. What is exciting? How can we compare it to something we talked about last week, so people feel that, hey, I'm actually getting pretty knowledgeable. I understand this, and now this is connected to the thing I watched last time. So this is kind of the thought process. But I mean, usually it takes like 1-2 hours to do preparations in the evening, and then I do live streams in the morning. So of course, it takes a lot of time, but also there is a clear process kind of that I've developed usually.
Do you recommend doing videos, YouTube videos?
YouTube, yeah, of course, yeah. I think because people don't only watch one channel. Whatever it is, blockchain or programming, people watch 10 channels, and people always have their own personality, their own take, their own view on things. So I think there's always room for more. And as I mentioned, I mean, kids right now, they don't even watch television, and so many people right now are not even connected to the internet that will be connected in the next, 1, 2, 3, 5 years. So internet population will really explode. I mean, we're talking India, we're talking China. There's so many countries that are not connected. So definitely there is room for more, but YouTube is also not easy, and it might seem easy sometimes, but it's actually very hard. But there is always an opportunity. Sure. Yeah.
Thank you for coming
Oh,
to
yeah.
Israel. Welcome.
Thanks.
What do you think about privacy, and specifically, do you think that Bitcoin is private enough?
Bitcoin is not really private. I mean, it could be private if you really thinking about all the details of your UTX, so which inputs you use, which outputs you use. So it could be private, but nobody is using you. Most probably you use a wallet. The wallet decides for itself which inputs it uses, which outputs it creates. And so in that sense, Bitcoin is more anonymous than it's more pseudonymous than anonymous. You have a pseudonym that is your address. And
But do you think is it an issue? Do you think it's a problem?
I don't think it's a big of an issue, really. An issue that is potentially dangerous in the future is fungibility. That if you receive a Bitcoin from me, and you obviously on the blockchain you can trace exactly where this Bitcoin came from, and then you want to deposit it on an exchange, and the exchange says, hey, this Bitcoin was involved in this crime or this shady business, we don't accept it. And suddenly one Bitcoin is not equal to one Bitcoin. Different Bitcoins are worth differently.
Starting to happen.
Yeah, and you see, for example, the US banning some Bitcoin addresses because of sanctions. And so in that sense, yes, it is something that is potentially problematic, but also not really. I mean, you have so many innovations happening on top of Bitcoin with Mimblewimble. You have things like Dandelion. You have things like, of course, we've had the mixing for a long time. So at the end of the day, I think Bitcoin it will not be a major issue, and as long as you have that in mind, it's not that big of a thing for me, at least. But I understand the worry people have that one Bitcoin is not equal one Bitcoin in the future, and I think it will be even more easier to track Bitcoin in the future with a better AI, better machine learning. You see startups already right now getting a lot of money to do that. Chain analysis is the most known one. And in that sense, I think that we will have layer 2 solutions that solve this with, for example, Mimblewimble or other innovations. And until that happens, Monero and Zcash have a clear use case and a clear place in this market. Yeah.
Shachar from Kodi, using what you said about the separation between money and state.
Yeah.
What do you think about possible initiatives like Facebook issuing a stable coin?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they can make a lot of money on it. They can do an ICO, a lot of people will invest, but at the end of the day, it's not really adding a lot of value, really. And I think, there are rumors that WhatsApp is going to have a stable coin, and maybe it will be easier to send payments across the world using WhatsApp coin. And it could put Facebook in a very powerful position, but is it really good for the world? I don't know. Obviously, decentralized cryptocurrencies are the most interesting to me, and to most people. Facebook coin will probably not be very decentralized, but it really shows the power of internet companies that maybe in the future Facebook coin will be more important than the US dollar because everyone in the world is using Facebook coin. who needs the US dollar anymore? I mean, these kinds of questions that would be impossible 10 years ago are now possible. And and even now in Sweden, you have the government wanting to create their own digital currency. Maybe it's not even a cryptocurrency because it is centralized. But what they see is an issue with the fact that all transactions in Sweden are happening digitally. You don't have a lot of cash, and Sweden might be the first society that becomes cashless, and everyone needs to have a bank account and a credit card, which is a huge issue. And the central bank actually in Sweden doesn't like that. That is why they're starting this initiative with an e-crown, because they don't want the entire nation to be dependent on Visa and MasterCard. Because if something happens to those, you cannot buy food, you cannot buy gas, you cannot do anything. And also you have a few private banks that everyone needs to use. Everyone needs to be a customer in a private bank. And so therefore they want to create a currency, digital cash. You have an app. You don't need to be a bank customer to send transactions internationally to anyone in the world. But probably it will not be very decentralized for the reasons we talked about yesterday. The state will probably not give up the control. And so there are many opportunities to create something for many companies, but at the end of the day, it is the decentralized currencies that, in my view, add the most value to the world. And it can also be, we should keep in mind that cryptocurrencies can also become very depressing, because if you have Facebook coin and you have one company that can track everyone on the blockchain, exactly what you buy, it's even worse than the system today. And if they don't like what you're doing, they exclude you, as we've seen now with different YouTubers being excluded from Facebook and from YouTube and from Patreon. What if that happens with a cryptocurrency that is global and they blacklist all your addresses and you cannot use it anymore?
They want to make WeChat.
WeChat, WhatsApp, right?
Actually, WhatsApp. With
yes.
WhatsApp, they want to make WeChat.
Yeah.
And WeChat, we know what's going on over there. So.
Yeah, like social credits in China. And that cryptocurrencies could be scary in that way, and blockchain could be scary in that way. You have a database where everything stays forever and all the transactions stay forever. So there is definitely a dark side to blockchain as well. Yeah,
let's take last question.
Yeah, you had a question before.
Hi, Anna from Bancorp. You mentioned use cases for blockchain for social impact and nice ones where decentralization fits their perfect. Right? Financial inclusion, corruption.
Right.
We're taking on financial inclusion and a few pilot projects we have running in Africa, but I'd love to know what other companies you think are doing exciting information or exciting projects in that space.
In that space, well, as I mentioned, this Finnish company is very interesting. Unfortunately, I don't remember the name, but they do these cards with that you can use Bitcoin. You can give them Bitcoin, they give you a credit card, and you can use it wherever you want. That is very, very exciting. But in terms of helping people in third world countries, I actually don't have a great picture of that, exactly who works with what. So maybe you can teach me that instead. But obviously, looking at the technologies, the use case is there. There's a great use case with following each penny, where it goes, where it's being used. And it's been tried. It's not really a new idea. It's been tried on Bitcoin before. Bitcoin kind of pivoted from that and changed the way architecture is constructed on Bitcoin with the different opcodes. So you cannot really do that anymore. But now you have Ethereum, you have other projects, and you guys are building something. So I would love to hear more later.
We'll be happy to tell you.
Nice.
That's it, guys. We don't have time to done.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.